TR. Promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. This is NEWSLINK. Here are the top stories. The Malian army confirms attack in central region as former rebel group claims control of 2 more bases in the north. Côte d'Ivoire's ruling RHDP party of President Ouattara secures 56 seats in Saturday's senatorial election. Guinea's transitional president Doumbouya's UN 78 General Assembly invitation sparks opposition protest, and Liberia's Independent Electoral Commission appeals for additional funding as the October 10 elections draw nearer.
We anticipate that working with the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, we will be able to receive the balance 3.2 million for these elections, which of course include a possible runoff, because we have procurement that we are to undertake.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more coming up.
Here is Tawfiq Abdul Nasser with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in Liberia, Ghana and the Gambia. But let's begin this edition in Mali, where tensions between the armed forces and former rebels escalated on Sunday, resulting in a firefight. The army wrote on X, formerly Twitter, that an attack had taken place in Lere and a response was underway but gave no further details. The Tuareg group CMA, for its part, confirmed the attack, saying it seized and took control of 2 army bases in the central town of Lere. Abdullahi Hassan tells us more.
The Malian Army and the Coordination of Azawad Movements CMA separately confirmed the incident, but neither of the sides announced casualties from Sunday's fighting. Lately, the two have been engaged in intense gunfight in the north. The renewed conflict is in part due to the withdrawal of the UN peacekeeping force and failure to implement the Algiers peace agreement. MINUSMA's drawdown is creating a vacuum in the center and north of the country, which the army and ex-rebel group all seek to control. Last week, the Rebel Alliance said it had attacked 4 army positions around the town of Burem, some 500 kilometers from Lere, the scene of Sunday's face-off. In Burem, the CMA fighters snatched vehicles, weapons and ammunition, said the group's spokesman Mohammed El Maulud Ramadan. The Tuareg group have long complained of government neglect and sought autonomy for the desert region they call Azawad. The Coordination of Azawad Movements signed up to a peace deal with the government and pro-government militia in 2015, but tensions resurfaced since the military coups in 2020 and 2021.
Abdullahi Hassan reporting there. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, at least 50 terrorists were neutralized in the eastern and central eastern regions of the country over the weekend. The counteroffensive by the Burkinabe army was communicated by the state media. The raid came days after an attack by suspected terrorists on a displaced persons camp that killed several civilians. Oge Obi-Erika has more.
The Burkinabe army carried out strikes on Saturday in the eastern and central eastern regions, killing around 50 terrorists. According to sources, the insurgents were traveling towards Faturi, a community in the eastern region, when the army launched airstrikes. The armed forces gave credit to its surveillance system that it said detected the terrorist movement. The army flagged the operation as successful and allegedly foiled an attack against peaceful populations. At the same time, the army said it is continuing its operation in Sogodin in the north central after inflicting a crushing defeat on the terrorists. As a reminder, last Thursday, terrorists attacked a position of the combatant forces in Sogodin in the north central region. Repulsed with determination by the soldiers, the criminals, estimated at 300, fled, splitting into several groups. The intervention of aerial support made it possible to decimate a large number in Koko and the surrounding bush. This development comes just as Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger all signed a new security alliance to further protect their shared borders and better fight against terrorism.
Ogilvy Erica filed that report. In the latest development, the trio of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have signed a security deal essentially to synergize and build a military alliance against any rebellion or external aggression. According to the charter establishing the Alliance for Sahelian States, the cooperation will help the countries to contain an insurgency linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, particularly on their shared borders. In recent times, Burkina Faso and Mali have countered heavy losses of civilians and soldiers due to renewed armed attacks. Niger, on the other hand, is on the edge with fears of an imminent military intervention by the Economic Community of West African States to restore constitutional rule in the country. The initiative's operation, sustainability, and stability are our focus. We will bring more in this report in the second half of the bulletin. Now, Guinea's transitional president, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, will attend the UN General Assembly's 78th session, aiming to bolster diplomatic ties. The UN's decision to host him has drawn criticism from the Guinean opposition planning a protest at the UN headquarters to decry military rule. Their aim is to express discontent with the way the country is currently being governed by the military junta. Matisi completes the story.
According to the State Protocol Department, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya's visit to the United Nations seeks to bolster diplomatic ties and cooperation between the Republic of Guinea and the international community. The impending participation of the Guinean junta leader in the 78th Ordinary Session of the United Nations General Assembly is already being criticized by the Guinean opposition. Fode Balde, a prominent figure within the former Prime Minister Sidia Touré's UFR party, is among those expressing their concerns. Members of the opposition coalition Les Forces Vives are calling for a demonstration this Tuesday outside the United Nations headquarters. Mamadou Selou Diallo, the key leader of the UFDG, is involved in these efforts. Supporters of the junta believe that the opposition's demonstration is primarily aimed at preserving Guinea's reputation within the UN General Assembly. They also plan to organize a counter-demonstration in solidarity with the ruling military.
Matisi with that report.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. NEWSLINK continues.
Let's now bring you some political stories. Days after the weekend senatorial elections in Côte d'Ivoire, the Independent Electoral Commission has declared provisional results. Recall on Saturday, September 16, around 9,000 voters went to the polls across the country to elect new lawmakers. The election came 2 weeks after the municipal and regional elections that had the ruling party secure the majority. As the Moredet reports, the senatorial elections took place in 32 electoral constituencies.
The September 16 senatorial election, as reported by the state media, passed peacefully without any recorded incident of electoral violence or irregularities. However, as speculated by political analysts in the build-up to the election, the results are in favor of the ruling rally of Euphrates for Democracy and Peace, RHDP. RHDP again emerged with the most seats in Saturday's vote, as it did during the twin elections of September 2. Out of the 66 seats to be contested at the polls, President Alassane Ouattara's party secured 56 senatorial seats. This victory means the ruling rally of Euphrates for Democracy and Peace has a majority at the upper house of the Ivorian National Assembly. The Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire, PDCI-RDA, having won 3 districts, namely Belia, the autonomous district of Yamoussoukro and Ifu, came second with 6 Senate seats. After securing 75.73% of the votes cast in the Beauclerc region, an independent list was declared elected with 2 senators. The former ruling African People's Party Côte d'Ivoire PPACI, Laurent Gbagbo, was unable to produce a single senator in the elections. Both the September 2 twin elections and Saturday's poll are as vital ahead of the nation's presidential election due in 2025.
Imaradet reporting there. More on electoral matters ahead of the conduct of the October 10 presidential and legislative elections in Liberia. The National Elections Commission is assuring a credible and transparent election that reflects the will of the people. However, the chairperson of the commission, Davidetta Brown-Lassana, praised the funding gap is closed. She said despite the received budget allocation, over $3 million is still needed. WADR's Darlington Popper has the rest of the details.
According to Commissioner David Etta Brown-Lassana, the Commission has received a significant amount of the budget for the elections. Nevertheless, an extra amount, about $3.2 million United States dollars, is still needed for effective planning.
With respect to how well situated we are when it comes to funding, we say that we have received most of the $53 million United States dollars that was budgeted for the elections, and we anticipate that working with the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, we will be able to receive the balance $3.2 million for these elections, which of course include a possible runoff, because we have procurement that we are to undertake just in case there is a runoff, and we cannot afford to wait when the runoff is near.
For her part, Madam Dede Pusa said the Commission is currently providing specialized training for elections magistrates across the country. She said the training is centered on the voting and counting process, especially with the introduction of the biometric voter registration cards.
We had a new technology introduced to the BVR. Of course, that was something new, which they also had to be trained for. And then going to election, we're not going to do an electronic election though, but we may have some slight modifications on our procedures. Before, when you vote, of course, we were using the OMR cards, which was the co-laminates. We would perforate the card. And this time the card's not going to be perforated. So they're going to have such information. Now, which finger it is to be inked, that's also a kind of information they need to have.
At the moment, campaigning activities are ongoing across the country. On Sunday, thousands of Liberians attended the campaign launch of the main opposition leader, Joseph Boakai, of the former ruling Unity Party at the Antoinette Tottenham Stadium. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
You're listening to NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. The Malian army confirms an attack in the central region, while the former rebel group claims control of 2 more bases in the north. Côte d'Ivoire's ruling RHDP party of President Ouattara secures 56 seats in Saturday's senatorial election. Guinea's transitional president Doumbouya's UN 78th General Assembly invitation sparks opposition protest, and Liberia's Independent Electoral Commission appeals for additional funding as the October 10 elections draw nearer. Still ahead is the press review, guest interview, and sports update. Stay tuned.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Now, across Sierra Leone, President Julius Maada Bio's revelation of the United States' interference with the outcome of the June 24 elections in his country has sparked mixed reactions. President Bio's comment on Friday is his first public reaction to the joint report by the US, France, Germany, and the EU regarding the conduct and fairness of the poll. Recall that these countries had issued a joint statement following the election in which they expressed concerns about the lack of transparency in the tabulation process, citing national and international observers. Now, late last month, the U.S. State Department announced visa restrictions on those believed to be responsible for or complicit in undermining democracy in Sierra Leone through vote rigging or intimidation of election observers. But political actors, rights activists, and NGOs in Freetown say they are not surprised and see an attempt to undermine democracy. Aminata Finda Masakwai is a rights activist.
Well, I was not expecting them to be that open in some of the issues, but we know that they are in control indirectly. And it's rather unfortunate that we think we are free, we think we are no more slaves, but indirectly still subdued to actions that come from the West. We cannot handle our issues 100%. We still stand on our own, on our feet, even consider the resources that we have. So I ask myself a question: why Africa? We still cannot be independent. It's a concern to every African that we think deeply. It's still a concern. Why are we like this?
Do you feel that it's a deliberate attempt to undermine democracy in Africa?
Firstly, I will blame our leaders, our politicians. They are never true. They are never. They are not transparent with us. It's about selfishness. It's about themselves, not not even the people that they govern. But again, if you watch closely, you will see that there are external powers all trying to push their agenda in Africa. Because when you had a coup plot in Guinea, you France is supporting or trying to push their own agenda. Even what has happened in Niger, we are seeing now the battle of supremacy. Supreme powers are now trying to interfere in these countries. And I blame our African leaders. So it's about selfishness, it's about balance, it's about corruption. Because if we manage our resources well, we'll not be dictated to, but we are not.
Aminata Finda Masakoi is a rights activist. It should be noted that President Julius Maada Bio was re-elected after he secured 56.17% of the ballot, just above the 55% needed to avoid a runoff. Away from political matters, in Nigeria, the 23 Armored Brigade in the northeastern state of Adamawa has reached out to 1,300 internally displaced persons at Makohi camp with free medical treatment. Located in the Yola South local government area of the state, the camp is housing over 3,000 displaced persons due to the decade-long insurgency in the region. Makohi is one of the 5 official IDP camps in operation. WADR's Usman Umar reports.
The military authority in the state is now reaching out to the IDPs with medical assistance, despite sending its personnel as teachers to their camps. The Brigadier Commander, Brigadier General Muhammad Gambo, said the gesture is to support the IDPs with the needed medical attention as citizens are going through difficult times as a result of the fuel subsidy removal.
We have 5 internally displaced persons camps here in Yola. Out of the 5, 2 are situated outside Yola town, making it difficult for them to reach out to medical, and then also the children are not able to access the various schools in town. We saw it as stakeholders to also contribute our own quota.
Brigadier Commander of the 23rd Armored Brigade, Yola, said drafting its medical personnel to the camp is to help the vulnerable with necessary medical attention. Meanwhile, Captain Ibrahim Hamman, the head of the 23rd Brigade Medical Unit, spoke on the area of coverage.
Now is rainy season, so the commonest diseases found at this period include malaria, fever, and then because of scarcity of water, they're also predisposed to typhoid fever, and then some other illnesses commonly that presents, that's hypertension, and then diarrhea in children, and then pneumonia.
Adamawa is one of the northeastern states devastated by the decade-long Boko Haram insurgency. Many of the displaced persons are indigenous of Borno State, the epicenter of the violence that killed thousands of people and forced millions out of their homes and villages. Despite the insecurity, Niger, Chad and Cameroon are hosting several of the displaced persons. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Usman Omar in Abuja joins us again with the major headlines from the Nigerian dailies.
Hello and welcome to the press review segment today. As usual, we have quite a number of dailies on our table today, but our attention will be on two of the national dailies, the Punch newspaper and the Vanguard newspaper. Now, the Punch is leading with this banner headline: marketers eye fresh fuel price hike as crude hits $94 per barrel. With the rider, National Association of Road Transport Operators plans hike raises concern over federal government's insistence on 617 naira per litre petrol price. Another rider says operators insist petrol subsidy returning gradually, whereby NNPC Limited, that is Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, gets 3 new vice presidents. Of course, this is a very interesting story and the one that raises concern among the government and the governed, because already at 617 naira rather per litre, the economy is already taking its toll on the citizens. And now that fuel crude price has risen to $94 per barrel, of course, citizens might just have to adjust again for another increase in price of fuel per litre. The next paper we'll be taking a look at is the Vanguard newspaper. Now, the Vanguard is leading with this story that says outrage as Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission defends jumbo pay for National Assembly members, others. Of course, there are riders to this story. The first rider says it's disheartening, unjustifiable, unacceptable. This is according to Nigeria Labour Congress. It's heartless. This is according to Ankyo Briggs. Ankyo Briggs is from Niger Delta. She is an activist. Another writer here says it is insensitive. This is according to the Labour Party. Remember, the Labour Party is the party of Peter Obi, which came third in the just concluded general elections. So, Revenue Mobilization last week on Friday actually came up with a press release justifying its desire to increase the allowances of National Assembly members and others. And there has been public outcry regarding the jumbo pay these guys take home, only for us to be greeted with another increment. And the commission responsible for allocating salaries, wages, and commissions, that is Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission, has come out to justify this increase. So how this will pan out, we'll continue to also monitor and hope that reason will prevail, because as things are in Nigeria, workers are the ones feeling the burden the most. And this is the much we have for you on today's edition of the Press Review segment. It's back to you in the studios.
That was Usman Umar with the press review.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
Now, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have signed a security agreement to form a military alliance against rebellion and external threats as outlined in the Alliance for Sahelian States Charter. This alliance aims to combat insurgencies linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS along their shared borders. Recent armed attacks have resulted in significant civilian and military casualties in Burkina Faso and Mali. Meanwhile, Niger faces concerns of potential military intervention by the Economic Community of West African states to restore constitutional rule. This initiative's operation, sustainability, and stability are our focus this afternoon. Joining us on this development is Morgan Asoba, a regional security expert.
It is definitely clear that this new step or this new development of the relationship between Mali, Burkina, and Niger is just there to enhance their different directions, because this is just like cementing what has been already grounded since the past few months. So it is nothing new. It is rather something complementary that comes to enhance the disintegration process in West Africa.
Now, Mr. Morgan, there are also experts like yourself who have argued that this is actually the beginning of the end because, except for Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger are still members of the G5 Sahel Force and other similar security joint task force, all aimed at tackling insecurity. And this, according to analysis, have failed to do the needful. Mali itself is battling former ex-rebels, the CMA, over their failure to reach an agreement on the 2015 Algiers peace agreement. How do you think all this combined will make this alliance a success?
In every single process, there is a price to pay. And also there is a need of moving to different strategies when some strategies have failed. It is clear that the G5 Sahel and many other attempts to juggle the security issue to fight the terrorism within the Sahel region has not been that much productive and convincing. This is why many of the said countries have been looking elsewhere to figure out new strategies involving new partners.
Now, Mr. Morgan, I'm curious, in what ways do you think this sort of initiative or alliance will hinder the swift return to constitutional rule? Because all of them, the three states, are coup states.
That is a development that makes it very difficult. It also depends on what do we consider as a return to the normal constitutional ruling. This, if it has to do with having a leader that is from the civil, let's say civilians, and that is elected into powers, these are not things that are not doable. It has been done so far in the various African countries. They will make sure that there are elections. They will make sure that the power is given back to a so-called civilian, but they will rather make very sure that whoever comes into power does not, let's say, rebuke or does not stand as a stumbling block to the various security deals that have been made so far.
Morgan Asoba is a regional security expert. Up next is sports with Sankule Janko.
Hello out there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The head coach of the Super Falcons, Randy Wadr, has invited 24 players for the Nigeria's 2024 Women's Africa Cup of Nations who have gone qualify against Sao Tome and Principe. This will be the Super Falcons' first competitive game after the end of the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. The multiple African champions, Nigeria, will resume their 2024 AFCON qualifier at the Mobolaji Johnson Arena, Lagos, on 22 September against Sao Tome. Among the invited players include Rasjad Ajebede of Atletico Madrid, Barcelona Famini striker Azizat Ashowola, and Paris Saint-Germain FC goalkeeper Chimamaka Anadozie. Nigeria will take on the same opponents in the return fixture a week later on 26 September. That's it for sports. It's back to you.
We have come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Inyas Bilimu and Mustafa Sek for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I'm Tawfiq Abdul Nasir. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinion.